Commander Jack Lucky Thorne had never intended to become the galaxy's most reluctant patriot. But as he stood on the observation deck of his salvage ship, the inappropriately named Fortune's Favor, watching the stars blur past, he couldn't help but laugh at the cosmic joke his life had become. "Hey, Captain Sunshine, your brooding is scaring the atmospheric regulators again." The voice belonged to Crix, his four-armed mechanic whose species name contained so many clicking sounds that Lucky had given up trying to pronounce it about 10 minutes after they'd met. "Just appreciating the view," Lucky replied, gesturing to the vast nothingness of deep space. "Ah yes, the endless void. Very inspiring." Crix's upper arms crossed while the lower ones continued tinkering with a busted servo motor. "We're approaching the quarantine zone. Vox wants to know if you're still committed to this exceptionally stupid idea." The quarantine zone, officially designated as Prohibited Sector 42X by the Galactic Council, but everyone called it the Tomb of Humanity. Lucky preferred to think of it as home. Earth. Once the homeworld of what the galaxy considered a fascinating but ultimately self-destructive species. According to official Galactic Council records, humans had obliterated themselves in a fit of resource wars and environmental collapse around 300 years ago. The final broadcasts from the solar system had shown massive destruction and chaos before all communication ceased. The Council had declared Earth a quarantine zone, a cosmic monument to the folly of unrestrained technological advancement without proper spiritual enlightenment. The perfect cautionary tale for younglings across 1,000 worlds. "Tell Vox to maintain course," Lucky said, his eyes fixed on distant stars. "There's good salvage in the quarantine zone." What the mighty Galactic Council didn't know, what almost nobody knew, was that Earth wasn't actually dead. Far from it. Humanity had simply gone quiet, playing possum on a galactic scale. Lucky still remembered the briefing from General Hammond before his last official mission for Earth intelligence. "The galaxy thinks we're extinct, Commander Thorne. That's our greatest strategic advantage. We need to keep it that way until we're ready." Ready for what? The general had never specified. But Lucky had picked up enough to know that humanity was building something big. But something that would change the balance of power when they finally decided to announce their continued existence. And then Lucky had gone and screwed it all up by getting dishonorably discharged for unauthorized diplomatic initiatives with the daughter of the Arcturian ambassador. In his defense, she had made the first move. And how was he supposed to know that in Arcturian culture, sharing a breathing apparatus was tantamount to a marriage proposal? Now he was just another salvager with a ragtag crew, skirting the edges of the quarantine zone, collecting space junk and selling it to the highest bidder. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept his ship flying and his crew fed. "Captain, we've entered the outer boundary of 42X, announced Vox, the reptilian navigator who communicated almost exclusively in navigational coordinates and disapproving sniffs. Today it was the latter. "Excellent. Start scanning for debris fields." Lucky swiveled away from the viewport. "And Vox, try to look less like you're attending your own funeral. The Galactic Council hasn't patrolled this region in decades." "The Council may not patrol, but scavengers and pirates do," Vox replied, scales shifting to a worried purple hue. "This area is considered unlucky." Lucky grinned. "Then we're perfectly named for the job." What he didn't mention was that the quarantine zone was the one place he could occasionally receive encrypted updates about Earth's status. After all, being dishonorably discharged didn't mean he'd stopped loving his planet. He just had to love it from a safe distance, while the rest of the galaxy continued believing the lie that humanity had engineered its own extinction. As far as the Galactic Council was concerned, Earth was just an insignificant graveyard, a footnote in cosmic history. And that was exactly how Earth wanted it. "Captain, I've located something unusual at coordinates 227 Mark 43, Vox announced, tail twitching with uncharacteristic excitement. "It doesn't match any known debris pattern in this sector." Lucky leaned over the navigation console, coffee mug in hand. The object appeared to be drifting, its trajectory suggesting it hadn't been in the quarantine zone long. "Definitely not Earth origin," he muttered. "Scan for life signs." "None detected," replied Vox. "But the hull configuration suggests Meridian Design Council diplomatic vessel class. Lucky raised an eyebrow. What's a Council diplomatic ship doing near Earth space? Being very, very broken, interjected Crix, who had appeared silently behind them, a disturbing talent for someone with 12 joints per limb. Structural integrity at approximately 26%. Something explosive happened to that ship. Pirates? Asked Lucky. Pirates don't leave salvageable ships behind, Vox countered. They steal them. Lucky drained his coffee. Well then, let's go see what the Council's been up to in our little corner of forbidden space. Crix, prep the boarding gear. Already done, Captain Predictable. I had everything ready the moment we detected something shiny and potentially valuable. Crix's forearms gestured elaborately, each in different directions. Because unlike some species, mine evolved with the capacity to multitask. 2 hours later, Lucky floated through the ruptured hull of the Meridian vessel. The emergency lighting cast an eerie blue glow over the destruction. Whatever had happened here hadn't been an accident. Glass pattern suggested internal explosion sabotage, not external attack. Crix, how's that life support coming? Lucky asked over the comm. Operational for approximately 18 standard minutes, the mechanic replied. After that, we either leave or evolve gills. I recommend the former. Lucky made his way to the ship's data center. Most systems were fried, but the central data core remained intact, protected by specialized shielding. That wasn't standard for a diplomatic vessel. Vox, I'm sending you a data stream. See if you can decrypt any of it. I'm not sure that's wise, the navigator replied. Council encryption carries severe penalties for unauthorized access. Just do a surface scan then. I want to know what this ship was doing here. 15 minutes later, they were back on Fortune's favor. The salvage data core sitting on the mess hall table like a ticking bomb. The encryption is military grade, Vox reported, but I did manage to access the mission parameters. This vessel was on a resource survey mission. In a quarantine zone? Lucky's instincts flared. That doesn't make sense. What makes even less sense, Vox continued, is that Earth is listed in their database as a harvestable planet, despite being classified as a dead world. Lucky felt his blood run cold. Show me. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a list of planets categorized by resource potential. Earth was highlighted with a priority designation. Who authorized this survey? Lucky demanded. The Resource Acquisition Division, Vox replied. A subdivision of the Council I've never heard of. Their director is listed as Admiral Thorne. Lucky's face darkened. I know that name. High-ranking military officer, ambitious, ruthless, not someone who bothers with dead planets. He stared at the data core. Someone knows Earth isn't as dead as advertised. That's impossible, Crix interjected. Everyone knows humans wipe themselves out. It's basic history. History isn't always accurate, Lucky replied, mind racing. We need to take this data core somewhere safe and decrypt the rest of it. Someone in the Council is planning something for Earth, and I doubt it's a memorial service. The ship's alarm suddenly blared to life. Captain, Vox shouted from the bridge, Council military vessel approaching at high speed. They're hailing us and demanding immediate surrender. Lucky cursed. How did they find us so fast? The data core, Crix realized. It must have a tracker. Lucky grabbed the device. Vox, plot a course for the Rylos Nebula. We can lose them in the interference. Crix, how fast can you isolate this thing? Faster than you can mispronounce my species' name. As the Fortune's favor accelerated away from the approaching warship, Lucky stared at the innocuous-looking data core. Someone knew Earth's secret, and that someone had enough influence in the Galactic Council to send military ships into a quarantine zone without explanation. Whatever was happening, Lucky knew one thing for certain. The remarkable insignificance of Earth in galactic politics was about to change dramatically. They're still on our tail, Vox shouted as the Fortune's favor bucked violently. Another blast from the pursuing Council vessel rocked the ship. sending Lucky stumbling across the bridge. Tell me something I don't know. Lucky grabbed the edge of the navigation console to steady himself. Like how close we are to the nebula. 3 minutes at current velocity, Vox replied, scales flushing a stressed orange. If we survive that long. Cricks. Lucky yelled into the comm. How's that engine boost coming? The mechanic's voice crackled through the speaker, punctuated by the sound of sparking circuitry. I'm rerouting power from non-essential systems. What counts as non-essential? Lucky asked. Currently, anything that won't immediately kill us. So gravity in the cargo bay, secondary life support, and your coffee maker. Lucky winced. Not the coffee maker. The coffee maker, Cricks confirmed. Your addiction must make sacrifices for our survival. The ship lurched forward with sudden acceleration, pressing Lucky back into his seat with bone-crushing force. That's more like it, he gasped. On the view screen, the Council vessel grew smaller but still maintained pursuit. The ship's markings were now clearly visible, black and silver, with the distinctive emblem of the Resource Acquisition Division. Not standard Council military. That's Admiral Zorn's personal flagship, Lucky muttered. The inevitable. What's a high-ranking Council admiral doing chasing junk salvagers? Perhaps he's upset about his ship we found, suggested Vox. No, Lucky shook his head. That wasn't his ship. This is about the data core. He doesn't want anyone knowing what's on it. The nebula loomed ahead, a swirling mass of gases and stellar debris that would scramble sensors and provide cover. The Fortune's Favor plunged into the multicolored clouds, immediately buffeted by gravitational eddies and radiation currents. We've lost their signal, Vox announced after several tense minutes. But we've also lost navigational control. The nebula is interfering with our systems. And our engines, Cricks added over the comm. We've got maybe 20 minutes of thrust left before something important explodes. I vote we make it not be the engine room, which coincidentally contains me. Lucky assessed their options. Set course for Nexus Station. It's on the edge of Council space. Thorne won't risk showing up there without proper authorization. Nexus Station? Vox's scales shifted to a worried blue. That hive of criminals and contraband dealers? Exactly. No better place to disappear while we figure out our next move. 3 hours later, the Fortune's Favor limped into dock at Nexus Station, trailing coolant vapor and with one thruster completely offline. The station itself was a sprawling construct of mismatched modules, unofficial additions, and questionable engineering, a place where Council law was more suggestion than mandate. Keep the ship locked down, Lucky instructed as they disembarked. And hide that data core somewhere safe. I'm going to find an old contact who might help us. The corridors of Nexus Station assaulted the senses, a cacophony of alien languages, the mingled smells of various species foods and pheromones, the flashing advertisements for services of questionable legality. Lucky navigated through the crowds with practiced ease until he reached a nondescript door marked only with a faded blue spiral. He knocked 3 times, paused, then twice more. The door slid open to reveal a dimly lit bar. Behind the counter stood a woman with silver-streaked black hair and cybernetic implants tracing delicate patterns along her temples. Well, she said, voice laced with wry amusement. If it isn't Lucky Thorne, still wearing that same beat-up jacket after all these years. Hello, Mira, Lucky replied. I seem to be in need of information again. Mira's augmented eyes scanned him, irises whirring as they adjusted focus. You look like someone who's attracting exactly the wrong kind of attention. Council military, perhaps? Lucky grimaced. How did you know? Because Admiral Zorn's agents were here asking about a salvage ship matching your description barely an hour ago. Mira leaned forward. What did you do to upset the Resource Acquisition Division? They don't typically concern themselves with small-time salvagers. We found something they lost, Lucky replied carefully. Something about Earth. Mira's expression darkened. Come to the back room. No. Once they were alone, Mira activated a signal jammer. Whatever you found, it's bigger than you realize. The Resource Acquisition Division isn't just another council department. It's Zorn's personal project, operating with minimal oversight. What are they acquiring, exactly? Resources from prohibited zones. Places the council has declared off limits like your home planet. Mira fixed him with a knowing look. Yes, I've always known you're from Earth. I'm an information broker, remember? Lucky felt a chill. But Earth is supposedly dead, which makes it the perfect target for unsanctioned resource extraction. Mira projected a holographic map. Zorn's division has been systematically harvesting from quarantine zones across the galaxy. No witnesses, no questions, and full deniability if discovered. And now Earth is next on his list, Lucky realized, the implications hitting him. But why now, after 300 years? Mira's smile was grim. That, my old friend, is the billion-credit question. Whatever's on that data core you stole might tell us. But one thing's certain, you've just made an enemy of one of the most powerful figures in the Galactic Council. And he'll tear apart this station to find you. As if punctuating her words, an alarm blared throughout Nexus Station, followed by an announcement. Attention all residents. Council inspection teams are conducting a security sweep. Cooperation is mandatory. Lucky and Mira exchanged looks. You need to leave, she said, and I need to come with you. Zorn knows we have history. I have a ship full of contraband and a damaged engine, Lucky countered. Mira's cybernetic eyes gleamed. And I have a plan. But you're not going to like it. This is a terrible plan, Lucky hissed as he, Mira, Crix, and Vox huddled in the maintenance shaft beneath Nexus Station's main concourse. Stealing a council official's personal shuttle? Why not just shoot ourselves and save time? Because bullet wounds hurt, Mira replied, deftly bypassing the security panel. And this isn't stealing, it's creative borrowing from a corrupt official. Crix, wedged uncomfortably in the tight space, clicked his mandibles in agreement. I like her. Can we keep her? You're not helping, Lucky growled. I rarely try to, Crix shot back. Vox, whose reptilian frame was particularly ill-suited for crawl spaces, managed a pained wheeze. The council forces are sweeping level by level. We have approximately 12 minutes before they reach this section. And done. Mira announced as the panel flashed green. Access granted. Let's move. They emerged into a private docking bay where a sleek shuttle waited, small, fast, and most importantly, carrying council identification codes that would let them pass through any blockade. Once aboard, Mira slid into the pilot's seat with practiced ease. I'll get us clear of the station. You three figure out what's on that data core. I thought you were coming with us because Zorn knew about your connection to me, Lucky said suspiciously. Mira's smile was enigmatic. That, and I'm the only one who can fly this particular model of shuttle without triggering its security protocols. Funny how things work out. As the shuttle detached and accelerated away from Nexus Station, Crix connected the data core to a portable decoder. The screen flickered to life, displaying masses of encrypted data. This will take hours to fully decrypt, the mechanic said, but I'm getting fragments already. Star charts, resource analysis reports, and Oh? Lucky leaned forward. I don't like Oh. According to this, Crix pointed to a partially decrypted file. The Resource Acquisition Division has been monitoring Earth for decades. They know it's not dead. Lucky felt his stomach drop. How much do they know? Enough to be concerned, Vox interjected, reading over Crix's shoulder. They've detected energy signatures consistent with advanced technology. But they haven't approached because of something called the Phantom Protocol. I've heard whispers about that, Mira called from the cockpit. A council directive establishing that Earth is to be left alone because of some ancient treaty. Very classified, very mysterious. So why is Zorn suddenly interested in Earth now? Lucky wondered. Crix continued decrypting files. Because the treaty expires next month. According to this, the original agreement was for a 300-year quarantine period. After that, Earth becomes fair game. The implications hit Lucky like a physical blow. For centuries, Earth had used its presumed extinction as a shield, building strength in secret. But that protection was about to vanish. "We need to warn Earth," Lucky said. "They need to know the Council is coming." "And how exactly do you propose to do that?" Mira asked. "Sending a direct transmission would reveal Earth's status to anyone monitoring communications. And your little ship is in no condition to make the journey." "We need to stop Thorne before the quarantine expires," Lucky realized. "Remove Earth from the harvest list entirely." "Oh, is that all?" Crix's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Why didn't you say so? We'll just ask the paranoid, power-hungry Admiral to pretty please leave your planet alone." "No," Lucky replied. "A plan forming. We go to the source. The Galactic Council headquarters on Centrum. If we can access their central planning system, we can delete Earth from the database entirely." Vox's scales paled to an alarmed white. "Infiltrate Council headquarters? The most secure facility in the galaxy? Impossible." "Actually," Mira said thoughtfully, "not entirely impossible. But we'd need help from someone who specializes in the impossible." "You have someone in mind?" Lucky asked. Mira's smile widened. "Ever heard of Plex?" 3 days later, they were parked in a decrepit tavern on Callisto Prime. Listening to a fluorescent purple humanoid with compound eyes describe the most audacious heist plan Lucky had ever heard. "Let me get this straight," Lucky interrupted Plex's enthusiastic explanation. "You want us to pose as waste management contractors, sneak into Council headquarters through the garbage disposal system, access a maximum security terminal, and alter official Council records all without getting caught or killed?" "Precisely." Plex's multifaceted eyes glittered with excitement. "Simple, elegant, and only slightly suicidal." "And what's in it for you?" Lucky asked suspiciously. "The satisfaction of outwitting the Council's security system and a modest fee, of course." "Of course," Lucky muttered. "There's something else you should know," Mira said quietly. "Something I discovered while analyzing the shuttle's communication logs. Thorne isn't just planning to harvest Earth's resources. He's planning a full military invasion." Lucky stared at her. "Why? That makes no sense for a supposedly dead planet." Because Mira met his gaze steadily, the logs indicate he knows humans are still there. And he has some kind of personal vendetta. The invasion is scheduled for the day after the quarantine expires. Lucky felt icy determination settle over him. This wasn't just about protecting Earth's secret anymore. It was about preventing a massacre. "All right," he said to Plex, "we're in. When do we start?" Plex grinned, revealing too many teeth. "We already have. I took the liberty of registering us as contractors while you were deliberating. We start tomorrow." "Fantastic," Crix groaned. "I always wanted my epitaph to read 'Died in a garbage chute.'" "Look on the bright side," Lucky said grimly. "If we succeed, we save Earth. If we fail, we won't have to worry about epitaphs at all," Vox finished. Centrum City gleamed like a jewel in the morning light, its towering spires of crystalline metal stretching toward the pink-tinged sky. At its heart stood the Galactic Council headquarters, a massive structure of impossible architecture, all sweeping curves and gravity-defying angles. Lucky adjusted his poorly fitting maintenance uniform and tried not to look suspicious as their transport approached the service entrance. "Stop fidgeting," Mira whispered beside him. "Maintenance workers don't care enough to be nervous." "That's because maintenance workers don't usually commit high treason," Lucky shot back through a forced smile. Behind them, Crix was hidden under a tarp in the back of the transport, his 4 arms and insectoid features too distinctive to disguise. Vox sat stiffly in the driver's seat, scales painstakingly colored to match the predominant species of the maintenance division. Plex, in contrast, looked perfectly at ease. The changeling's biology allowed for remarkable adaptations, and today he appeared as a bored-looking bureaucrat with the appropriate credentials. "Remember," Plex murmured as they approached the checkpoint. You're invisible because you're unimportant. No one looks twice at maintenance. The guard at the service entrance barely glanced at their credentials before waving them through. Step 1 complete. See? Plex grinned. Invisible. Let's not celebrate yet, Lucky cautioned. Getting in was the easy part. They proceeded through labyrinthine service corridors, following the path Plex had memorized from stolen building schematics. At a maintenance junction, they retrieved Crix from under the tarp. Next time I get to be the bureaucrat, the mechanic grumbled, stretching his cramped limbs. Do you know how many dust particles accumulate under a tarp? I counted them. All of them. Focus, Lucky urged. We need to reach the central data hub without being detected. Plex consulted a holographic map. The hub is 5 levels up, through the executive section. High security. But I have a route mapped through the environmental control ducts. The ducts, Crix repeated flatly. How original. Classics are classics for a reason, Plex replied cheerfully. 20 minutes later, they were crawling through narrow ventilation shafts, guided by Plex's uncanny sense of direction. Lucky was beginning to understand why the changeling had such a legendary reputation, despite his eccentric personality. Stop, Plex whispered suddenly. Security drone ahead. They froze as a small hovering device drifted past their position, its sensors sweeping methodically. It's on a timed pattern, Plex observed. We'll have exactly 47 seconds to cross the junction when it passes again. When the drone disappeared around a corner, they moved quickly, emerging into a larger maintenance area adjacent to the central data hub. Through a small window, they could see council technicians monitoring massive data arrays. Now what? Vox whispered. We can't just walk in there. We don't have to, Mira replied, pointing to a secondary access terminal in the maintenance room. That connects to the main system for diagnostic purposes. If I can access it, I can reach the resource allocation database. You'll need an authorization code, Plex warned. Already taken care of, Mira tapped her cybernetic temple implant. I downloaded the maintenance supervisor's credentials while we were at the checkpoint. That's both impressive and terrifying, Lucky remarked. Mira smiled. I'll take that as a compliment. While the others kept watch, Mira connected to the terminal. Her cybernetic implants interfaced directly with the system, her eyes flickering rapidly as she navigated virtual data structures invisible to everyone else. I'm in the resource database, she murmured after several tense minutes. Searching for Earth, got it. Listed under priority acquisition. Delete it, Lucky urged. Not that simple, Mira frowned. The entry is locked with Admiral Zorn's personal authorization. I'd need his biometric. An alarm suddenly blared, cutting her off. Red lights flashed throughout the facility. What happened? Lucky demanded. Security sweep, Plex hissed. Random but regularly scheduled. Bad timing. How long do we have? Vox asked, scales rippling with anxiety. Minutes, Plex replied. We need to move. I'm not done, Mira protested, fingers still flying across the terminal. I can't delete Earth from the database, but I might be able to reclassify it. Make it fast, Lucky urged, drawing a small blaster he'd kept concealed. Crix, Vox barricade the door. Plex, find us another way out. The sound of approaching security forces echoed through the corridors. Mira worked frantically at the terminal. Almost there, done. I've reclassified Earth as toxic biohazard extinction event in progress. That should buy us some time. Now let's get out of here, Lucky said. But as he turned, the maintenance room door slid open, despite the barricade. Admiral Zorn stood in the doorway, flanked by armed guards. Tall, with scaled skin and predatory eyes, he regarded Lucky with cold amusement. Commander Thorne, he said silkily. How predictable. Earth sends its disgraced officer to do its dirty work. Lucky raised his blaster, but Zorn made no move to draw a weapon. Put that down, the Admiral said dismissively. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't have made it past the entrance. You knew we were coming, Lucky realized. I've known about you since you salvaged my survey ship, Thorne replied. Did you really think finding that vessel was an accident? It was bait, and you took it magnificently. Why? Lucky demanded. Why target Earth now? Thorne's reptilian features twisted in what might have been a smile. Because I remember, Commander. I remember when humans weren't playing dead. He stepped closer, guards remaining at the door. 300 years ago, my ancestors encountered your species. You were primitive, barely space-capable. They offered knowledge, advancement, a place in the galactic community. And Lucky kept his blaster steady, though he sensed it would do little good. And your people took that knowledge, twisted it, and used it to develop weapons. When the Council sought to contain the threat, Earth disappeared behind a fabricated extinction story. Thorne's eyes narrowed. My family has passed down the truth for generations. Humans didn't die, they hid like cowards, building strength while appearing weak. Smart strategy, Lucky countered. Didn't the great General Tzu of your own home world say something about appearing weak when you were strong? Thorne hissed. The quarantine treaty your ancestors negotiated expires in 1 week. Then nothing will protect Earth from justice. You mean revenge, Lucky corrected. That's what this is really about. Call it what you will. Thorne gestured, and his guards raised their weapons. Your infiltration attempt has failed. In 1 week, Earth will face the consequences of its deception. Not if we stop you first, Lucky replied. Thorne laughed. With what? A salvage crew, a changeling, and an information broker? You have no power here. Lucky's finger tightened on his blaster trigger. We have the truth. The tension in the maintenance room was thick enough to cut with a plasma torch. Security forces had them surrounded. Admiral Thorne stood triumphant, and Lucky was running out of options. The truth? Thorne laughed coldly. What truth would that be, Commander? That your species faked its own extinction? That you've been hiding for centuries, building who knows what kind of weapons? That doesn't help your case. Lucky lowered his blaster slowly, a plan forming. You're right. But that's not the truth I'm talking about. Lucky, what are you doing? Mira whispered urgently. He ignored her, focusing on Thorne. Tell me, Admiral, have you ever actually been to Earth? Seen it with your own eyes? Thorne frowned. Of course not. It's a quarantine zone. Then you don't know what Earth has actually been doing all these centuries. Lucky took a calculated risk. You think we've been building weapons? Preparing for war? Haven't you? Thorne challenged. Lucky smiled. Computer, authorization Thorne Omega-73. Execute protocol Lazarus. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the terminal Mira had been using lit up with a new display, one showing Earth's actual status, transmitted directly from hidden satellites throughout the Sol system. What is this? Thorne demanded. The actual truth, Lucky replied. Earth hasn't been building weapons, Admiral. We've been building this. The display showed images of vast orbital habitats, terraforming projects on Mars and Venus, asteroid mining operations, a solar system transformed not for war, but for peaceful expansion. For 300 years, we've been focused on one goal, ensuring humanity would never again be confined to a single fragile planet, Lucky explained. We didn't fake our extinction because we were planning to attack anyone. We did it because we needed time without interference. This could be fabricated, Thorne said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. It's not, Mira interjected, her cybernetic implants scanning the data. This is a direct feed. These are real-time images. And that's not all, Lucky continued. Box, show the Admiral what else we found on that data core. The reptilian navigator nervously produced a data chip. This contains evidence that elements within the Resource Acquisition Division have been violating Council law by harvesting resources from multiple quarantine zones, not just Earth. Activities explicitly forbidden by the Council Charter. Thorne's scales darkened with rage. You're attempting to blackmail me? No, Lucky replied calmly. I'm offering you a choice. Right now, this data is being transmitted to every Council member species. They'll see two things: Earth's peaceful development and your division's illegal activities. You're bluffing, Thorne hissed. You couldn't possibly have access to Council-wide communications. Plex cleared his throat. Actually, he can, because I gave it to him. The changeling's form rippled, revealing a new appearance, one matching a high-ranking Council communications officer. Did I mention I have friends in interesting places? Lucky watched realization dawn on Thorne's face. The Council won't look kindly on unauthorized invasions of peaceful worlds, Admiral. Especially when those worlds have spent centuries developing technologies that could benefit everyone. What do you want? Thorne demanded. Simple. Earth stays off all harvest lists. The quarantine remains in place, but now as a mutually agreed protection, not a deception. And you get to keep your career by taking credit for discovering a lost human civilization that wants to rejoin galactic society on its own terms. You expect me to help you? Thorne seemed incredulous. I expect you to help yourself, Lucky countered. This can either be the scandal that ends your career or the diplomatic coup that defines it. Your choice. For a long moment, Thorne was silent, calculating. Finally, he motioned for his guards to lower their weapons. You play a dangerous game, Commander Thorne, he said quietly. But a clever one. I will present your proposal to the Council. Whether they accept it is beyond my control. That's all I ask, Lucky replied. Oh, and we'll be keeping a copy of that data core. Insurance, you understand. Thorne's expression was unreadable. I understand perfectly. Now, I suggest you and your associates leave before I reconsider the wisdom of letting you walk out of here. 3 days later, Lucky stood on the observation deck of the Fortune's Favor, watching a news broadcast on the holographic display. The headline scrolled across the bottom: Historic Revelation, Earth Civilization Thrives in Self-Imposed Isolation. The broadcast showed Council representatives meeting with the first official human delegation in 3 centuries. General Hammond, Lucky's former commander, was visible in the human contingent. I can't believe it worked, Crix commented, all 4 arms crossed in a posture of amazement. You actually outmaneuvered an entire galactic conspiracy. Not me, Lucky corrected, eyes still fixed on the broadcast. Us. This crew. Mira stepped beside him, her cybernetic eye whirring softly as it adjusted to the observation deck's lighting. What happens now? To Earth, to us, to the Fortune's Favor. Lucky turned from the display, taking in the faces of his crew, his family. Vox's reptilian features showed rare emotion. Plex had settled back into their preferred form, and even the normally stoic Crix seemed moved by the moment. That depends, Lucky replied with a hint of his old smile. Are you all still interested in the smuggling business? Because I think our rates just went up considerably. Mira couldn't help but laugh. With an exclusive connection to a newly discovered human civilization? I'd say so. Not to mention, Plex added, shifting slightly closer, we now have unofficial leverage with both the Council and Earth's leadership. That's a rare position to be in. Lucky nodded, his expression growing more serious. It won't be simple. Earth's still operating under the protection of a quarantine, and will need to navigate carefully. Some factions on both sides would rather keep the old arrangement. Like General Hammond? Vox asked quietly. Exactly. Lucky's jaw tightened. He wasn't pleased when I informed him of our improvisation. The original plan was for Earth to remain hidden for at least another decade. But you changed that, Mira observed. Why? Why? Lucky was silent for a moment, considering. The stars beyond the viewport shifted as the Fortune's Favor adjusted its course. Because secrets have power only until they're revealed, he finally answered. Earth spent 3 centuries building something remarkable, but hiding it was becoming more dangerous than sharing it. Zorn's operation wasn't the first threat, and it wouldn't have been the last. Crix made a contemplative clicking sound. The Council species will want Earth's terraforming technology. It's centuries ahead of anything they have. And in exchange, Lucky continued, Earth gets legitimacy, protection, and access to resources beyond the Sol system. A fair trade. The broadcast shifted to footage of Earth itself, gleaming orbital habitats, circling a blue planet that had healed from the wounds of ancient wars, verdant continents visible beneath swirling white clouds. "It's beautiful," Mira whispered. "I've never seen it like this." Lucky nodded. "Few have. For generations we maintained the illusion of a devastated world. Holographic projections, false radiation signatures, an entire planet hiding in plain sight." "And now?" Vox asked. "Now we build bridges," Lucky said firmly. "Between Earth and the galaxy, between past and future." He turned to face his crew directly. "Which is where we come in. The Fortune's Favor is uniquely positioned to serve as an unofficial diplomatic vessel. Half the crew with connections to Earth, half with ties throughout Council space." "I sense a lucrative opportunity," Plex remarked with a sly smile. "More than that," Lucky countered. "A chance to shape what comes next. Earth's reemergence will reshape galactic politics for centuries. We can help ensure it happens without conflict." Ambitious, Mira noted, but her tone was approving. "Would you expect anything less?" Lucky grinned, some of his usual swagger returning. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime from the ship's communication system. "Incoming transmission," the ship's AI announced. "Origin, Earth Central Command. Priority level Alpha." Lucky exchanged glances with his crew. "Let me guess, General Hammond wants to discuss my career prospects." "Want us to give you privacy, Captain?" Crix offered. Lucky shook his head. "No need. Whatever comes next, we face it together." He straightened his jacket and nodded toward the communications panel. "Put it through." As the holographic display shifted to show General Hammond's stern visage, Lucky squared his shoulders. Whatever reprimand or reassignment awaited him, he knew he'd made the right choice. Earth had hidden long enough. It was time for humanity to step back into the light, and the crew of the Fortune's Favor would be there to guide the way. "Commander Thorne," Hammond began, his voice carefully neutral. "The Council has requested Earth send a formal diplomatic delegation to Centauri Station. Given your unique position, the Coalition leadership believes you and your vessel would be the appropriate choice to transport our representatives." Lucky managed to hide his surprise. "I'm honored by the assignment, General." "Don't be," Hammond replied dryly. "This wasn't my recommendation, but apparently you've made quite an impression on certain Council members." He paused, then added with grudging respect, "And your unorthodox methods did accomplish in 3 days what our diplomatic corps believed would take years." "Just doing my duty, sir," Lucky replied, unable to completely suppress a smile. "Your new orders are being transmitted now. Report to Earth Station Artemis in 48 hours to receive the diplomatic team." Hammond's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "And Thorne? Your father would be proud." The transmission ended before Lucky could respond. For a moment, the observation deck was silent. "Well," Plex finally said, "it appears our smuggling career has taken an interesting turn." "Diplomatic escort," Vox mused. "Certainly more respectable than our usual jobs." "And probably better paying," Crix added pragmatically. Lucky turned to Mira, who had been watching him closely. "What do you think? Ready to help write the next chapter of human history?" She smiled, placing her hand on his arm. "With this crew? I can't think of anything I'd rather do." Lucky nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders, one he hadn't realized he'd been carrying for so long. For years he'd been caught between worlds, neither fully part of Earth's secretive plans nor truly at home among the stars. Now, perhaps he could finally be both. "Plot a course for the Sol system," he ordered, turning to look once more at the stars stretching endlessly before them. "It's time to go home."